Farmland Preservation for Feta Farms, Block 75, lots 19, 30, and 3002. There's a memo dated August 5th, 2015 from Jürgen Holzbusch, Chairman of the Open Space Advisory Board. This memo, Liz, do you want to address this?
Actually, Mr. Holzbusch is here. I think he can address it, or I can address it preliminarily.
And then if there are any questions or whatever.
Yeah.
All right.
So essentially, Paul Perfetta has a very beautiful, very large farm that is 300 plus acres that sits on the corner of, well, part of it sits on the corner of Pleasant Run Road and well, runs from Pleasant Run Road back to Summer Road and 202, that area. He came into the planning board some time ago and received approval to do sort of an amazing organic farm there, where he's going to have all sorts of crops and organically raised beef that will be processed on the property. And he also came in with an application for a 25,000 square foot farm stand market on the corner of Summer Road and 202. And that was approved by the planning board. And everyone was very excited about the prospect of this state-of-the-art organic farm that Mr. Perfetta is planning. So Mr. Perfetta has made an application for funding from the county and the state. And the Stephanie Miller, who's the project manager from the State Agricultural Development Commission, wrote to us asking about whether the township would fund a portion of the preservation of this property and whether the township would commit the balance of its county trust fund, municipal grants fund, and the balance of its state municipal pig account for use in preserving the farm. So this brings us to Mr. Holzbusch's memo, where the Open Space Advisory Board has a recommendation. And the question before us tonight is, do we follow the recommendation of the Open Space Advisory Board with respect to our response to Ms. Miller's questions about what, if anything, the township is willing to do with respect to funding this sort of extraordinary preservation project?
If I can make a few remarks, appropriate?
Yes, please.
You want to identify yourself just for the record?
Jürgen Holzbusch, Oakland Road, Readington, Open Space Volunteer, Chair of the Open Space Advisory Board. Our committee generated a letter to you in the map outlining what Liz just talked about. Let me just make a general comment. This is an exceptional property. This is 343 acres of land that is between Pleasant Run, 202, and Summer Road. It is prime soils. It is contiguous to farmland in 4 areas. It is contiguous to municipal open space in 3 areas. It has the Pleasant Run and tributaries running through it. It is next to the Readington Trail system. It is an exceptional property. What we're asking is not to use any municipal funds, not to use our municipal open space funds. Rather, it is to recommend that money earmarked at the state and county level in trust in Flemington and in Trenton be utilized for this opportunity to cost share with the state. The state would like to preserve this property. The county would like to preserve this property. The Open Space Board feels the same way. There is money, but the proposition is if we don't use the money, we lose it. We have the potential to lose that money because the state will reallocate it to another opportunity. So it is a rare opportunity where we will not spend funds from Readington, but we'll use what's in a trust in 2 different sources, the state and the county, for this property. So it's a real win-win, and we're very much in support of it, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Or John Plus, also past chair of the Open Space, is happy to answer.
When you say you're going to preserve this, is this to buy the development rights or to buy the ownership piece of the property? But the county and the state is going to
It's the development.
we're going to buy the development rights. And that amount was like,
Well, the estimate, I don't have the precise information because it's going to be based on appraisal of things that may be not known today. But the general number we've heard from the state is a total of $5.5 million. The majority of that would be handled by the state, then 25% by the county, and 25% for the funds that Readington has access to decide where to use that for each farm association opportunity.
does this have any bearing whether this is done on Profeta continuing its organic farm?
That I can't speak to. All I know is that the monies will come into a residence of Readington. There's active development going on, commercial development. It is not just the 343 acres that are being talked about. The Fed is actually farming 1,000 acres in Readington. So it is an expanding, growing commercial operation. It is hiring people. It's putting some commercial space on 202 Summer Road that the planning board has approved. So it's a real opportunity. My fear is that this opportunity will not exist in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. So it is now an opportunity for us to act while the funds are in those trust funds and we can influence that.
What's the I'm sorry. What's the downside of not receiving this?
Well, it's an opportunity lost because the trust funds may not be there. It's also an opportunity that all the vehicles, state, county, township, aren't going to enact this, and the development rights will not be secured. So it is a key. It is like a hole in the donut. There is preserved property, farmland, municipal around it. It is a perfect piece of property preserved as it is.
Jürgen, just a couple of comments. First, I appreciate you guys doing the good due diligence to move through this. I've got a couple of questions. And it kind of it stems to the fact that I understand these are grant monies and it's not out of the township money, but I think one thing that that I think about, regardless of where the money comes from, because at some point in time it's coming out of all of our collective pockets through some vehicle. And the one thing that struck me as I kind of looked at the letter and looked at the map that you were nice enough to attach, is how much of the, I guess the bottom line is how much is the risk that this will be developed in what could be, I'm going to kind of make it up here. I'm presuming it's 6 acre zoning over there. I'm presuming that there's some wetlands there. Pleasant Run goes through the property. There's a pipeline easement through a significant portion of the property. So my only concern is it's not just Readington's money per se, but if I look at how we're using these grant monies generally, and this is a statement maybe throughout the state, it strikes me that I hope that there's a thorough analysis that is done to determine whether or not there really is risk of development and really risk of losing what's in essence a preserved status today.
There's no such.
My point is, my point is, I understand it's not technically preserved, but if the economics and the infirmities that lend themselves or that would impede development are such that there's not going to be any development, in effect, it's preserved.
I think, first of all, Mr. Profeta, who is the owner of this property, has requested that it be preserved, and it's being preserved as farmland, not as open space. He wants to guarantee that his farmland, the money that he's investing will continue to pay off in terms of it being farmed.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity. So I think that this isn't being preserved because anybody's afraid of it being developed. I think it's being preserved because he wants to keep it unified as a piece of farmland, and that is his wish. The state has acknowledged that this, has recognized that this is a prime agricultural lands and that it is worth being preserved as farmland. So I don't think it's a question of whether or not it could ever be developed. I think anything can eventually be developed, but it's a question of keeping it intact as a prime piece of farmland.
And the concerns also about the wetlands and the very pleasant run going through the pipeline easement, those things are all accounted for in the appraisal, right? Those are all figured in the appraisal of what these development rights are worth. That's how that's accounted for. And, you have people at the State Agricultural Development Commission whose full-time job it is to look at these things throughout the state. You have dedicated individuals at the county whose full-time job it is to look at these issues and look at every farm that's available and determine the best ones to be preserved. And you have a very, very dedicated Readington Township Open Space Advisory Committee headed by Mr. Holzbush, who meet and spend hours and hours of their time determining which are the best farms within this township to be preserved. So there's a significant amount of analysis that goes into these recommendations, more than just sitting at a podium one night saying, hey, maybe it's not going to be preserved, or hey, maybe there's something better.
Mrs. Duffy, I fully appreciate the efforts that the Open Space Committee and a lot of other people go through when they assess whether or not they're going to spend grant money to acquire preservation rights. All I'm saying is, I think it's incumbent upon everybody, I'm not saying Readington, I'm talking the state, to make sure that those funds are spent for those cases where property is in jeopardy and it can be documented that it's in jeopardy of development.
I think that's not the reason for preservation.
That's not it might be one of the criteria, but it's not the prime criteria. Nobody's going to seek to preserve some asphalt lot because it might be developed. That's not the criteria that these very dedicated, very educated, experienced experts look.
I would point out that there have been parcels purchased, whether it be for open space or preservation, that were suspect as to whether or not it made sense.
And to answer your question as best I can, John, the state proposed a letter to us requesting our help in this effort. So they recognize this is statewide, an opportunity they want to take advantage of.
As the bottom, let me just clear the deck here. What I said is kind of a statement, an overall statement that I think everybody from Readington Township to the state needs to be very judicious about how these monies are spent, because at some point in time it's coming out of our pocket. I appreciate the fact that there are grant monies available, and we can use those grant monies for this purpose to meet our share, and not further burden our local taxpayers with additional funds in the event that the complete monies are available. I appreciate that. I just wanted to make a statement that I hope all the jurisdictions involved are really looking at these acquisitions as to whether or not it is totally necessary.
Yeah, I think due diligence on everybody's part is appropriate. So I think we've done that to the best of our ability, and our recommendations is as you see. So,
Mr. Holzbush?
I have
Your
a
question?
question, or an example, in a sense. The property is owned by Mr. Crefetta, correct? So he controls its destiny in the future. I have a cousin in Virginia. He has a 3,000 acre tree farm, and he wants that to be preserved. And when he dies, he's donating that to the conservation entities in Virginia to maintain that as a forest forever. So an individual owner has the right to preserve and to donate it. Okay, not costing anybody anything, he's just donating it to the state. Prior to 17 years ago, several people used to donate little parcels of land in this town. But since the Green Acre programs have come in, people now see to have them bought, or at least the development rights bought, so that it's costing taxpayers money.
I think your point about donation is valid. opportunities in future times where we get a donation based on some corporate real estate transactions. So we're thinking as best we can, and we'll take advantage of anything where we can preserve and protect this, the open space and farmland in this township.
Now, my understanding is that this is in the very preliminary stages here. We're not deciding tonight on whether to preserve this farm or not. Can you clearly describe what it is that OSAD, et cetera, are asking us to vote on tonight?
Yeah, John can probably support me on that. And you know John, right? John is the past chair of the Open Space Committee.
Yes, we know, John.
Excellent.
You want to just identify yourself in the mic?
John Klotz, 16 Winding Way. All right, so the history is Mr. Broten made application to the state preserve property. And just a comment. My understanding is he wants to farm property. Usually some of that money helps to support the farming activity, which is not an activity that makes people rich around here. He's got ideas about dairy, and organic vegetables, and he's working with coalition with some of the other landowners, the other farm owners, to he would farm that, or they would contribute part of this. And originally it was in line for being approved and funded, but then with the budget situation a year or two ago, that pot of money ran out. So now they have to reapply for this other county farmland program. But that involves a kick-in from the county and from the state. So we received this letter from Stephanie Miller from the state, basically saying, in other words, that, between the lines, this is important to us, and we're wondering if you could help us out. Would you be able to do your 20%? What we're saying is, and we realize the township's position on spending money out of the budget for preservation. In fact, that's been the township's policy since 2009, right? That we haven't spent any money out of the township's budget for open space. It's always been allocated money that we don't actually have, but maybe allocated to us, or we work with nonprofits. So basically, what we're asking is that you just answer Stephanie Miller to say, yes, we would like to help. No, we can't do the 20% cost share, because that's not what we're going to commit ourselves to. But what we can do is we can take from the county open space fund, which is allocated to us, about $330,000. Okay. Now that money is part of our county open space tax that we all pay to the county. 10% of it is then allocated back to the townships to use for township projects, preservation projects. It's not money we have, it's not money we can spend on anything else. It's money that's there for us to say, we're going to use it for X, Y, Z farm.
Can't we use that money for paying down the debt?
No, it's there to use for a project. There's no provision for it to use for paying down debt. We use our own open space, I understand. We haven't spent any of our own open space funds on municipal tax for open space. We've been using that to pay down the mortgage, so to speak, to pay down the debt. This is a pot that's there, we use it, and as Mr. Holster said, it's been building up. About $100,000 a year, this is like 3 years ago. We don't have any other big projects in the pipeline. This is the biggest and the best. Because of what the Fed wants to do, this will be a growing opportunity for beautiful local food. And he's committed to that. Whether or not he's going to sell property, he doesn't get this, I don't know. I don't even know the name, to be honest with you. But usually, this all comes into, I don't know if he's as rich as Mr. Trump or he's got my salary. I honestly don't know. But I would imagine it's part of his business. to continue to do this. Okay, then, we can give more than that $330,000. There, we have a state pot, which is called the PIG grant. And it's the preservation.
Planning incentive.
Planning incentive, right, and it's called the PIG for, the state decided to do that for farmland preservation. And, so we have a balance in that too. Similarly, that's not money we have, it's there. And when we have a project that we want to apply it to, we ask the state, can we apply to that? The balance right now on that is about $900,000. That coal road that coal farm in Readington, that is going through the process, and you were asked to expand the agricultural zone to include that. That's gonna take a little bit, about $100,000 of that. So there's the majority of that is available too. So what we're asking you is that Stephanie Miller be told that we would not fund the full 20% cost share, we won't do that. But that we would commit the balance of our county trust fund, municipal grants fund, and commit the remaining balance of our state agricultural development committee municipal PIG account for that. And that would take care of it without using any of our own money, without any taxpayer money going into that, and it would be a plus for that. I'm sure he might develop it. If he develops it, we're probably going to see, the tax hit on that is additional school costs and everything else that usually you see for new development in tax.
Yeah, John, are they looking for a resolution from the committee that they would agree to allocate the money that way, or they just want to vote in a letter? How do you want to do that?
I'm not knowledgeable. I would guess that just a vote and a letter from
I would just like to say that I had the opportunity to tour the farm, which is still in its fairly early stages, and was absolutely impressed with the scientific, I'm not a farmer, but the expertise that Mr. Profeta has garnered into what you feed the beef cattle and how often you change the fields. I walked through rows of beautiful organic vegetables. I didn't get over to the chickens, but we saw some of the hogs, all organic. And he's already supplying high-end restaurants with his produce. He mentioned Matt's Red Rooster in Flemington, Harvest Moon and Ringo's, and a couple of others. Don't remember them all. But this is a real business. This isn't gentleman farmer haying the Mac acres, and the market, if you will, that he's planning to put on the corner is larger than Wawa. I mean, it's not a vegetable stand. He's going to have take-out meals. He's going to have, the organic eggs from his chickens. He's going to have poultry and meat, organic, and his organic produce, among other things. So it's, as I said, this isn't your country boy farm. This is a serious business with lots of employees, and people certainly that I have spoken to who are aware of this are excited for this to come into full flower, which I think should be within the next year or so. That stand should be in process. So it's a pretty exciting thing for Readington. It's another neat way of putting Readington on the map. So I just wanted to share that. I was really impressed.
And another way that I think to look at the questions about responsibility around taxes and taxpayers. You're paying these taxes for the county tax and the state bond. was passed. So that's there, whether we use it within Readington or not. So we should take advantage of it to increase the quality of life, in our own township. This will be a great source for local organic food. A lot of people are getting more and more interested in organic and natural food. And we've already gotten some of the other landowners, some of them have preserved farms, to involve with it in terms of, I guess, selling some of their produce. They would have to go organic also, for him to do that. He's renting some of the township open space, at a very generous fee, I think, compared to what we're getting from anyone else. And that's staying free of pesticides. So I would hope that you would see your way to support.
All right, do I have a motion?
I would make a motion that we respond to Stephanie Miller, the project manager with the State Agricultural Development Committee, basically following the outline of Open Space Advisory Board's August 5th letter, agreeing that Readington will commit the outstanding balance accrued under the Hunterdon County Municipal Grants Program, and agreeing that Readington will recommend that the available fund balance in the state agricultural, the SADC municipal pig program be transferred to the county for the preservation of the Profeta farm.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I guess roll call, Peter.
Mr. Orion?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Tupelo?
Yes.
Mayor Ford?
Yes. Thank you all. All right, it's time we can go back to new business. No, this is public hearing. Cheat sheet. All right, first public hearing is on an ordinance amending and supplementing the district regulations of the Research Office RO zoning district contained in Article 4 of Chapter 148 entitled Land Development of the Code of the Township of Readington Land Use Volume. This is ordinance number 07-2015. Do I have a motion to close the regular meeting and open the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. I already read the title of the ordinance. Oh, well. Let me get to it. An ordinance amending and supplementing the district code. Okay. Are there any comments from the governing body on ordinance number 07-2015?
I guess my comment as a member of the planning board that was involved in bringing this ordinance to fruition is that as a planning board, we look at our basic land use zones and try to determine the best ways to maximize positive development within the township and minimize negative development in the township. And we believe that by adding some possible uses to the research office zone, we can increase the possibility that we will have businesses move into town that will bring jobs and will bring, economic benefit to the town. And so that's the purpose of the amendment to the research office zone, is to allow for some more beneficial uses.
Madam Mayor, at the last meeting when we first looked at this, I guess there were several questions that I had, and it appears as though those things that we discussed at that point in time have been addressed and cleaned up in this version, at least, as far as I can tell.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from the governing body?
I just noticed one typo. I don't know if this is one of the things you caught, but there's a typo in the word regulations at the top. It's misspelled.
Yeah. So do you?
Just saw that.
Are there any comments from the public? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing and open the regular meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Do I have a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Do I- Roll call, Rita?
Mr. Oriana?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Tropello?
Yes.
Mayor Cooper?
Yes. Public hearing number 2. All right, I will do this in order on my cheat sheet. Do I have a motion to close the regular meeting and open the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? All right. This is this is an ordinance amending and supplementing the Readington Township 2014 salary ordinance for officers and employees of the Township of Readington. This is ordinance number 0808-2015. Are there any comments from the governing body?
I have a few.
Go for it.
This is an item that we discussed as we were putting forth the budget for 2015. And during that process, I had pointed out what I believe to be some, in my personal opinion, some excesses with respect to salaries of the mayor and the township committee salaries. I was admonished, I think, at that point in time that that was the wrong time to address these. So I'm here today to readdress those, saying that this is the appropriate forum. And I'd like to point out a couple of observations that lead me to that conclusion. Readington Township's mayor and committee salaries have increased steadily since 2007. They are also nearly 30% higher than several other townships around here. By comparison, the total budget for Readington for Readington Township mayor and committee salaries proposed in 2015 is $43,700. Raritan, by comparison, had been $33,000 in total. Raritan saw fit to reduce the mayor and township committee salaries by nearly 30%. It's currently $23,400 in the 2015 budget. The township of Bernards has been at $27,200 as far back as I can find records, 2011. The township of Bedminster is also at $27,638. To be frank, I find it irresponsible for this township committee to increase our municipal budget by nearly 3%, which we did, and yet also ask to increase our own salaries when, by any measure, in my view, we are out of whack with any of the other jurisdictions around us.
I'm very confused. Are we increasing our salaries? I thought we were keeping them the same.
There is a proposed increase of 2%.
Well, on the committee members, that's pending. There's not the number that.
The numbers that are in here and what are in the budget that we proposed were a reflection of 2% over 2014.
Okay, but the salaries that are shown here were the 2014 salary for those two positions, because it says 2015 pending. So those are the same salaries. To clarify that these are 2014 salaries for those two positions.
So to be very clear, what's proposed in this ordinance 08-2015, there is no increase whatsoever in the salaries of
Right, because that was up for discussion. I think it was the decision of the committee to hold that discussion for a later date.
And to be even more clear, in my view, and I proposed this when we had the budget discussion initially in the late March meeting, I proposed a 25% cut, and I would like to see that done tonight.
Just to make it clear, as far as the ordinance itself, it would allow you to adopt that ordinance tonight, because it would have to be re-advertised. If you would like, you could amend the ordinance. You could adopt this ordinance and then amend it for those salaries if that person chooses.
That would be my recommendation.
That would be 6 something. I have no problem with that. I don't want to price ourselves into a position where people can't run for the township committee because they can't afford to hire babysitters and stuff to come to meetings and everything. I don't have any problem with cutting it some. I have to admit, I wasn't aware. When people say, how much do you get, I won't tell you what I'm telling them, but it's not that. So I was sort of surprised to see that too. I'm clearly not a very careful financial record keeper. I would have no problem with cutting it 25%, let's see, 25. Yeah, see what we're coming up with. 25 cents.
If that. For some.
Or-
For the main, down to that 7,000, over 7,000.
Yeah. And then
Or they,
about 6. I mean, there's about $1,000 difference there. So,
about 6,000.
I'm for holding the salaries at the current.
I'm also for holding the salaries at their current level. I would not be in favor of increasing them, but I think that at the current level, for a township committee member to be paid $8,355 for the amount of work we do, the amount of hours we spend, and quite frankly, the amount of money that's required to pay people to do things we don't have time to do. I work full-time. I have a parent. And I agree with Diane that I don't think we should be preventing people from running for office who are not wealthy retired executives. I think everyone should have an opportunity to run for and hold this office without losing money. And that's what I would do with this reduce. So I'm in favor of holding it steady but not reducing it.
Is that a motion?
That, I'll make that motion if no one has anything.
You're in public hearing, first of all, so you can't make a motion.
Oh, okay.
Second, the ordinance at hand holds the salary, so you would have to finish the public hearing and vote on the ordinance in its present state, and then if there's another motion.
all right, any other comments from the governing body? Any comments from the public? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing and open the regular meeting?
Second.
Let's do a roll call meeting. Easier.
Well, yeah.
You need a motion first.
Didn't I do that? I'm sorry. Do I have a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
No.
Mrs. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Trudillo?
Yes.
Mayor Ford?
Yes. All right, number 3. Do I have a motion to close the regular meeting and open the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ordinance appropriating $35,000 from the Housing Trust Fund for the acquisition of a deed restriction on an affordable housing unit, Block 34, Lot 36.158, in and by the Township of Readington in the County of Hunterdon, New Jersey. Are there any comments from the governing body? Sharon, can you just give the Reader's Digest condensed edition of this for the public?
This is a unit that's located in the White House Village development. It wasn't affordable housing, it was one unit, it was deed restricted for 20 years, sorry. And The deed restriction has run out. Basically, the owner could sell it as a market rate unit. In our affordable housing plan for the third round, that was given substantive certification, and of course is now being reviewed again because of this litigation. We did put in our plan that we would seek to at least renew the deed restrictions on 10 units in the affordable, in that development in order to satisfy our total housing plan. So this would do that. And then it prevents you by investing $35,000 for it, basically an unlimited deed restriction. You could renew it for, it will be 30 years, it can continue to go as long as the committee wanted it to stay in place as an affordable unit. And binding deed restrictions, it's been something that's been recognized by COAH in the past. I don't think it's going to be one of those issues where it's not going to be recognized as a way to preserve units. So it prevents you from having to build a brand new unit by preserving one that you already have.
Thank you. Any comments from anybody else in the governing body? Any comments from the public? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing and open the regular meeting? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Do I have a motion to adopt this ordinance?
I move to adopt the ordinance
Do I have a, go ahead.
appropriating $35,000 from the Housing Trust for the acquisition of a deed restriction on affordable housing unit of Block 34, Lot 36.158 in the Township of Readington, County, New Jersey, County 100 and New Jersey.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Rita?
Mr. Arnott?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Catella?
Yes.
Mayor Ford?
Yes. Wait. Hang on, I'm gonna get back to where we were. Special events permit for Signature Salon and Spa fundraiser, October 18th, 2015. Anybody have any comments? I have one comment. It's really not Linda Altieri's fault or anything, but nowhere on this does, I couldn't find anywhere on this that it gives the hours.
Oh, for the event?
Yeah.
They ran it last year.
I know, as I said, I don't have any problem with it. I just looked because I was thinking parking and the just conflict, and I couldn't find any time.
I certainly could get back to you.
I don't need it, I just thought somewhere in the future on these applications, it should ask for the times. That's really more a suggestion than, because, if it ends at 5, there's very little conflict with the rail, which is, they share a parking lot with. If it ends at 8, so that's all. I think it probably ends at early, but so anyway, I have no problem with the event though. Just a suggestion. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the special events permit for Signature Salon and Spa fundraiser, October 18th, 2015.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All, roll call? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, due to the resignation of Keith Hendrickson, we have a Board of Adjustment vacancy. I would like to suggest that we appoint Alan Harwick, who is a resident of Old Highway. He's a member of the Historic Preservation Commission. He has been attending Board of Adjustment meetings, actually more than some Board of Adjustment members, and I think he would make a very good member. Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion that we appoint Alan Harwick to the Board of Adjustment as first alternate.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, Sam, you want to take this? A plan for fully funding teachers' pensions?
Yes, the township committee members had received an email a while back from our assemblyman Jeff
Chavarelli.
And he put forth a proposal on how to help the state meet its obligation to fully fund the teacher's pension. I had a problem with his proposal, and I guess as John had mentioned previously in the correspondence, so does the town or county freeholders. They've written a letter, and it's a good letter. That was written before I wrote my letter, and mine's just a draft letter. I'd like the committee to take a look at it and decide if we'd like, to send a letter and what the contents of that letter might be. The main problem with the proposal is the same as the freeholders, is essentially the state has assembly and the governor has been unable or unwilling to fund the teacher's pension. Other states in the United States have faced similar problems and have found ways for the state and the assemblies in the state to solve and actually correct those problems. They have fundamentally the same problem. I think those things could have been done in New Jersey. Some of them did take several years, 3 or 4 years, to get to the point where they were growing their economy enough to do that. But it's better to start at some point and move forward. So my view is that's what the state should be doing. They should be lobbying hard our representatives to make New Jersey a better place to do business and grow, so that they have some more income and can meet their obligations. The proposal, in my view, was just kicking the can down the road and forcing that payment to be paid by the towns, which really have their hands tied to do anything in this situation other than to pay it, which would mean our property taxes and our debt would go up. We have not the luxury that the state has, which the court has just ruled that they don't have to pay a bill if they don't want to. They can't go bankrupt. Unfortunately, towns have to pay their bills at the end of every year, and we can't go bankrupt. So we in the county, the other towns in the county have been very diligent in meeting all our pension obligations. We pay all the other municipal township pensions, and they're fully funded. The state is the only pension fund they took on was the teacher's pension fund, and they have not adequately done that. I think it's their job to do, and I think they should look at ways and be more aggressive. There are many things they could have done in the past and should push for that I haven't seen done. And I'd rather them do that than just kick the can down the road and make us pay for it because we have the ability to tax people. So that was the essence of my letter, and I can read it if you want to.
I think we all have it in front of us.
Yeah, we have a copy of it.
But in any event, that was my request or motion that we work on a joint draft letter. We can take the ideas of the township committee as well as the freeholders into account and send such a letter to our assemblyman and to the governor, and also to other towns in our county. I'll let them know we sent such a letter. That's my proposal.
I personally don't feel that I have enough information on this to even take a position. I mean, we have the option of inviting Jack Chavarelli to come to a township committee meeting and explain to us if that would be helpful. Quite honestly, I think he's a voice crying in the wilderness, and that I think this is going to go on for a very long time, and I'm not sure that his proposal is anywhere near being adopted. I think he was sort of throwing ideas up in the air and seeing how they landed. I would certainly entertain if you would like to invite Jack to come to a township committee meeting and address us on this, or if we should just sort of wait a while and see where this goes down the road. And I think it's very early in the process, and he's one voice. That's just my opinion, but I'm certainly willing to entertain other opinions and listen to other.
There was an article, I think in the Democrat, by Eric Peterson, also one of our assemblymen.
He's not one of ours.
No.
He's an assemblyman, but he's not ours. He used to be.
Jack really is.
And Donna, Simon.
Okay, but he had an article that was, didn't really get into the details, and definitely didn't mention the part of moving the responsibility to the municipalities. But everything else was kind of placating or requesting the same kinds of thoughts. My own view is that you see a problem, you try to take care of it as soon as possible. Don't let it build up and
I think that's what Mr. Chitterell is trying to do with his proposal.
well, he needs feedback. You know, I mean, if you don't speak up, how is he going to know what you feel?
No, I agree. And I agree with Betty Ann that I certainly don't know enough about Mr. Chitterell's proposal to send a letter critical of it. But I did some research on it when I read your letter, and I think one of the tenets, which I think you're referring to, of the proposal is that no community is allowed to fund less than 25% of their school budget through the local tax levy. What's noted here in this article that I'm reading from, which is on the Star Ledger, is that some communities fund less than 15% of their school budget, while others fund more than 90%. And I'm willing to bet that we in Readington fund more than the 25%. And so I suspect that what this proposal would do would be to get other communities, specifically avid districts and people who are underpaying, to pay more. So I'm not convinced, with the limited amount that I know about this proposal, that this would harm Readington or any township in Hunterdon County. We don't have avid districts in any way. In fact, I think it could possibly help if this proposal caused other communities to have to pay their fair share. I would like to say that that's not the only thing in this proposal. Basically, it says no community can abate school property taxes on new developments. It notes that to encourage development, communities can abate municipal and county taxes if they so choose. This proposal would eliminate that. Basically, no free ride for the developers on the backs of the taxpayers. I'm in favor of that. It says for all current and future teacher retirees, no Medicare Part B reimbursement if their pension plus Social Security equals or exceeds $30,000 a year. I don't know, maybe that's a good idea. For all teachers with less than 10 years in the system, the pension account switched over to a 401k. Again, saving money, enabling us to fund the system. All newly hired teachers go immediately into defined contribution pension plan instead of into the pension system.
All those are things that are under the jurisdiction and the regulations of the state, which they could have done, and a lot of states have done, and implemented them years ago.
Right,
This state has
but
failed
we
to do that.
can look back at what could have been done years ago, or we can look at the fact that this is what Mr. Chitterelli's proposal is today. And we didn't get to the best part yet. The best part is that it would eliminate the Cadillac health insurance plans for all newly hired teachers. And I believe they're going to eliminate these Cadillac plans altogether. So all by way of saying, I don't know enough about this proposal, certainly to criticize it, because it actually sounds like a pretty decent plan to me. But what I would need to know, and what I think we all need to know before we criticize this plan is, would Readington be a community that would actually benefit from this plan? Are we one of those communities that actually pays more than 25% of our school budget through local tax levy? And if we are, getting the other people who pay less to pony up is going to be to our benefit, not to our detriment. So I think it's probably something that all of us should educate ourselves on before we decide to criticize a plan that has obviously had a lot of thought and effort and research going into it.
Why don't we, Sam, you want to take it on, call Jack and see if he would come to a township committee meeting? We could devote half an hour, maybe 20 minutes to, is that all right? I mean, that would be the place to do it. Okay? You want to see?
And
Okay, why don't you, that way we all be hearing the same thing, and he could explain if we had questions rather than writing a letter that I'm not sure. I don't know enough to write a letter at this point, quite honestly, so.
I guess, and I would recommend to anyone who's interested, the article that I was reading here was called "The Reform Plan to Solve Teachers' Pension Problems Once and for All." It was August 27th in the Star Ledger, and it was actually written by Jack Chitterelli. Wherein he explains his plan. So I think before we ask the man to take his time to come down here, we should read what he's published.
Okay.
And then if we have any further questions, we could ask him that.
Would you be so kind as to give Vita a copy, let her copy that and give it to
that's
all of
pretty
us?
much what he sent to the email.
Yeah, I went in my
So-
archaeology,
You would have known that.
I couldn't find, I looked for it today, and I couldn't yesterday.
I couldn't find it either, the email.
No.
I don't, was it in correspondence or something?
No, it was electronic, copy directly from Jack.
I'm not certain that I got that at all.
I usually get stuff from him, and I couldn't find it.
I didn't see it either. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
John, was it forwarded from Vita or was it directly from?
No, it came directly from Jack.
Yeah, I don't think I got it.
Okay.
I don't know that I usually do, but I could find emails on a lot of things, but not that. So maybe,
I can.
somebody
I can
either forward it or,
I'll
okay.
At any rate, I think it behooves us to educate ourselves before we ask the public officials to come running down here and spoon feed it to us.
Okay.
That's just my view.
Anybody else?
When will you have read it? When will you have read it? That's your objection.
Oh, no, it's not my objection. If you're saying that, I think we can educate ourselves by reading what he's written and doing some further research. I don't think we need him to come down here and read it to us. That's just my view.
Why don't we hold off and talk, can you bring it up at the next meeting after we've all had a chance to look at this? Or should we invite him up? Because he may be going crazy. Is he going this time? I don't know.
Maybe we should invite a freeholder, because they seem to have had enough.
They're not
research to
involved
agree
in the legislative process here, so.
I would, Madam Mayor, I would call your attention to the letter that the freeholders sent regarding their resolution, because I think it is on point.
Is it, is
It
that
might
here?
it might be instructive to those who went some background.
I know you had mentioned that. I don't think that specifically is referring to this proposal.
It is exactly.
Where,
Is it?
did we get that too?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
All right. All right, I will go back and look at all of
That
that.
would be part of our educating ourselves.
Okay. Request to request to reduce performance bond Regency of Readington Phase 1. When did you get it?
In here, you guys were early tonight, or?
Yeah, we did. I didn't see you before, I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's all right.
This is for phase one, Toll Brothers Regency, and they're moving quite good along with all those projects.
Yeah.
So they're looking to reduce the phase one bond from $663,471.36 down to $429,078.
Well, I just have a comment, and it may just be the anal self in me that goes through some of these things. The numbers didn't match out when I tried to add these up and subtract them and whatnot.
Yeah, you know what we had done before was we had taken it down, I think on this is the fourth one, the third one. We had taken it down to 30%, now they're going below 30%, so that's where the math discrepancy comes in.
Well, the numbers aren't here. We've done it before.
Right, we've done it, this is the fourth time it's been reduced, but this is the final accounting of all the, per the spreadsheet that's attached. These are all the units of measure that have been completed and their amounts. and that's where we take the final number.
So the 429 should tie to one of these pages over here somewhere?
Right, should be on the last page of that spreadsheet.
Gotcha, okay.
So that takes it down below 30%, so we were holding there. And so this is a
Don't mind the math. No.
final number, and that's where it comes down to what they have done, how much are we holding, so we want to return the difference.
Okay.
I appreciate you going through that.
All right, do I have, so Rob, you're recommending that we do this?
Correct.
All right, do I have a motion to reduce the performance bond for Regency at Readington Phase 1?
So moved.
To whatever that number is, to $429,078. John?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Oriana?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy? Yes. Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mayor Ford?
Yes. All right, request to reduce performance bond Regency at Readington Phases 2 through 4, letter dated September 3rd, 2015, from Ron Broten.
Now, these are the phases 2 through 4, they're looking to go from $2,493,706.97 down to $1,387,590.98. This will be the second reduction on this work. There's a little less along the section, phases 2 through 4. And then with this takes it down to 30%. You can hold back at least 30% even if they've gone lower on this page because they're less, they got more work to do on it.
Okay.
So those numbers should work out.
So you're recommending that we do that? All right. Do I have a motion to reduce the performance bond for Regency at Readington, phases 2 through 4, to $1,248,831.88? And
The 1387.
no, it's really $138,759.10 should be in cash, and the rest should be in
In a bond.
the bond. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Vina.
Mr. Oriana?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy? Yes. Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mayor Ford?
Yes. Administrator's report?
We just have to do the one resolution that everyone's got voted on.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, we have a resolution authorizing alcoholic beverage license renewals. Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Readington that the following Readington Township alcoholic beverage license renewals for 2015-2016 be approved. That's for Cali 2 LLC. Plenary Retail is Cali 2 LLC and Bency of White House Station. And Club is the White House American Legion Post 284. Do I have a motion to authorize those license renewals?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Oriana?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy? Yes. Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mayor Ford?
Yes. All right, now administrator's report. Okay. Oh, okay. Attorney's report?
Regarding the sewer analysis, I've got 18 of the 20 resolutions done, I just have the 2 big ones to finish. So I'm hoping to get them done within the week, to sewer advisory committee. And the other thing was that Mike Sullivan asked for authorization to work with Rob, getting any information he needs from the affordable housing perspective with respect to sewer. So if folks would authorize them to work together on that.
Does anyone want to make a motion on that?
So
Do I have a second?
Second.
I guess we need a roll call, do you have that? No?
Mike Sullivan's office was asking for authorization from Rob to get a full picture of what we need for the
Roll call, because there's good call.
Mr. Oriana?
Yes.
Mr. Broten?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy? Yes. Mr. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Engineers report?
Well, we completed our road reclamation job, and I'm happy to report that the reclamation work came in $65,000 under budget.
Woo!
And I would like to really give a shout out to Scott, Jessica and Scott Holzer, and the rest of the DPW. It's a pretty ambitious 10-road project this year. It was done very quickly, very efficiently, I think, and under budget, so.
Wow. And the roads that I have been on that they redid are really nice. They did a very nice
Paul's
job.
Mill came out very well.
Hall's Mill is wonderful.
And I'd like to thank the committee for going out for that many roads. It was a good amount to get done. I think that's what we got our better prices for having that amount
Okay.
of roads done.
Bulk roads, yeah.
And I'm still waiting for the DOT to set up this meeting on our flooding over there by Murph. It just continually gets, they have the contract awarded. They tell me they're just trying to get a meeting together, so I'm hoping they'll get this done before winter time.
Yeah.
I'll keep asking.
That's the song that never ends.
Hopefully it will.
Good. That'll be
Thank you.
exciting. All right. Committee reports. Tom Moriarty, Rec, Police, Library.
Nothing to report.
John Broten, Engineering, Roads, Maintenance and Recycling, Engineers Report, Finance Department, Payment of Bills and Pipeline.
The only thing I'll just comment on the pipeline, you'll notice that in the last 2 weeks, 2.5 plus weeks, I think all the pipe is now in the ground, save a couple of spots perhaps. So they should now be in the process of restoration and finishing. So I believe that's already occurred on the east end of the township, or it has begun, I should say. That's all I have.
This might be premature, but I would like to commend you on the job you've done, certainly up to this point on the pipeline. You've been diligent, you've been aggressive in the sense that you've been out there. You have walked it, driven it, and monitored it, and been in touch with the public, and I appreciate that. I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Liz Duffy, Planning Board, Farmland, Open Space Preservation, Land Projects Liaison Board.
Well, we spoke earlier about the new ordinance amending the RO zone. I think that's a good thing. At the open space meeting, we spent a decent amount of time talking about a new Cushatong Nature Center and Trail. The trail is going to be developed by an Eagle Scout, and it's going to have 2 kiosks. It's basically when you enter Lake Cushatong Woods from Route 22, there's a large patch of woods on the right, and the trail will be a circular trail that goes around there with a cut through the middle. And again, it's being developed as part of an Eagle Scout project, and I think it'll be really great for the people of Lake Cushatong Woods to be able to walk their dogs and take nice walks through the woods close by. It will, of course, be open to everyone in the township. And I guess that's the biggest report that I have on that.
Okay. Readington Ford Planning, Zoning, Sewer Advisory, Historic Preservation, Museums, Social Services, Code Enforcement. I had said earlier in our consent agenda that we had citations for 2 Eagle Scouts and 1 Gold Award winner, and I would just like to mention their names. The 2 Eagle Scouts are Stephen Grimes and Peter Schoderbeck, and the Girl Scout Gold Award winner is Samantha Wallace. The neat thing about these people, these young people, is as they are learning responsibility, how to do projects, how to talk Lowe's and Home Depot out of materials and all of those things, and how to get their friends to help. They're also performing valuable services for the township, and it's stuff either that we never would have had or we would have had to pay somebody to do. And it's really fun working with these kids. It's inspiring, and the size of the projects that some of them undertake it's really amazing. It's cool. It's fun. So that's all that. The museum had our final Friday night lecture this past, 2 Friday nights ago. A woman talking about the Lenape Indians who lived in this area. It was attended by about 25 people. It was a lovely presentation, and I guess that's all I have on any of those things. And Sam, liaison to San Capello, fire companies, rescue squad, school crossing guards, municipal court. Okay, this brings us to comments from the public. Lauren? You know the drill, state your name for the record.
Don Baldwin, Readington Township, good evening. I had a couple of questions and a couple of comments, but if I may make an observation and say hats off and thanks. Two things. Number one, that reclamation project that came $65,000 under budget. That was sweet words to a taxpayer. I haven't seen that in a while, so hats off to everybody who made that happen.
Appreciate it.
That's phenomenal to come in that far under budget. Thank you. I also wanted to thank John Broten for raising a very important point, which he raised months ago as well, regarding the compensation of this committee. I thank him for the efforts he did to check demographics on other communities in New Jersey to discover that we were out of line. And I must say I'm very disappointed that the other four members of the committee failed to correct that situation. And Ms. Duffy, as far as having jobs and families, I think pretty much everybody has families and jobs, so I don't consider that a substantive reason to be 30 or 40% higher compensated than everybody else in the area. I wanted to ask a question of, I don't know, the mayor maybe. What is the criteria for including correspondence in the agenda?
I think probably, I think I have to hand that one to you, Vita, because I think it's just what comes in. So it's what comes in. Okay.
Well, I asked that because a few years ago, I raised some issues to then Mayor Frank Adams several years ago. And he said that the committee was pressed for time. Could I reduce my questions to writing and provide him in letter form with those issues? They would be answered at the next meeting. They were not only not answered, they weren't even listed in correspondence. And I raised the issue subsequently, and nobody seemed to know why the correspondence never made it to the agenda. But specifically tonight, I understand that there was a citizen submitted a letter to the committee, and a same person who submitted a petition to this committee for the removal of Julie Allen from certain boards and appointments in this municipality. And I don't see that anywhere on the agenda. Did you receive that letter?
I did receive it, and I was asked to make sure that the committee members received it, and I did put it in the mailboxes as requested.
But it didn't appear in correspondence. How would the public know that that letter was given to the committee? That's my point. That's why I'm asking about the criteria. If you submit correspondence and it just vanishes.
It was addressed to the committee. I don't know. I mean, we had it in our mailboxes.
Yeah, but isn't the public part of the process too? I mean, to see the correspondence. I mean, there's a whole page of correspondence here.
I think Mr. Scammell, I think you asked them to pass it into the committee mailboxes. If I'm correct.
Yeah, but isn't that the definition?
I believe I also asked to be put on the agenda as to Mr. Broten, and I don't believe it's ever made it on the agenda.
So actually, earlier in the meeting, that Mr. Broten brought that up under the minutes and made a motion that it be placed on the agenda, seconded, and he voted that it's not going to be on the agenda. So that's not what's going to happen.
Well, that's kind of troubling because it's a very serious matter that's been going on for months, and the committee or certain people in the committee seem to want to sweep it under the rug and let it go away. I'd like to make observation that the evidence that was presented in accompaniment of that petition was some very serious stuff that was presented not by citizens but by judges who thought it so important that they memorialized the inappropriate behavior of not a private citizen, of a publicly elected official. And it's being ignored by the board, and I don't understand that. Will it be ignored indefinitely, or?
to bed.
Put it to bed. So it's not going to be discussed.
That's correct.
That's interesting. Ms. Dragan, you were kind enough to give me a statute which I reviewed. And it's clear to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that statute allows for the removal of people when it's appropriate from boards for cause. That's the statute that you gave me on a piece of paper.
Yes, I did give you that statute, and remember, I did a memo, I researched it, and there's no removal by citizen petition.
No, I said removal by committee.
Right, and
The statute's very clear on that, isn't it?
for
The committee's
cause,
ignoring it.
if they don't feel that they've reviewed your petition, the petition, they
It's
reviewed
not my
the letter. You know what, quite frankly, I'm a little confused at what is a petition, because in May, there was a petition that was given to Mrs. Fort, it was given to me, I looked at it, and then there was also a petition that was apparently read into the record that appears to be a different petition, has different wording in it. So I am not really quite sure what was signed onto by the various citizens, because there seems to be two different petitions with two different pieces of information in it. So I'm not sure what the correct petition is, number one. And secondly, it's up to the committee as to whether or not they want to entertain the petition or not, because...
Isn't it pretty clear, though, what the substance, the objective or the agenda of the petition was?
You know what the substance that comes to me is that people that sign a petition don't want Zell to be on these boards. That's the basic...
I would suggest that the judge's observations would suggest that she shouldn't be on the board, rather than the citizens.
I think the judge has made a decision with respect to each particular case, okay, because one had to do with condemnation. I don't know what the other cases were. I don't have copies of the opinions, but...
No, they weren't all about condemnation. Part of them was.
Okay, well, that...
It was over a period of years.
The committee took what was stated in petitions under advisement, and they're not required to...
I understand they're not
remove
required,
somebody
but to
based
sweep
on
it under the
those-
rug, I think, is shameful.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the public? Any comments from the governing body? Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Okay, we'll wait for Mrs. Baldwin's comment first.
Paul Baldwin, John Broten. I have a question. The executive session minutes list potential litigation, Mountain Laurel Affordable Housing, but hasn't a lawsuit been filed? No?
Not a lawsuit against Readington Township. There was a state Supreme Court, help me where I go wrong with this, a state Supreme Court decision dissolving the Council on Affordable Housing, and there's been motions to reestablish numbers for various townships. Readington has not been sued. We have actually been in compliance up until these new numbers. We have third-round substantive certification. We're the only in town in Hunterdon County that does. What we have been receiving is letters from developers who want to act as interveners. We have to come up with a new plan, which we are doing. We have a committee that is working with our experts, our affordable housing experts, to pull a plan together and come up with a plan that will be compliant. And so we haven't been sued. These developers are asking to intervene in our plan because they want to push their project over whatever, if they are not included in our plan. There is no lawsuit on this at this
Well, I
point.
think what Ms. Baldwin might be referring to is the declaratory judgment action. And
Oh, okay.
that's the action that we filed.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. So that has been filed, and that's what we're talking about when that's on that agenda.
Okay. So there are potential developers who own property in the township who would like to put COAH housing on their pieces of property. Is that correct?
They are seeking to, what's the verb I want, do, for lack of a better verb, something called builder's remedy, which would mean for every one affordable housing unit they produce, they would be able to build 4 market rate housing. If we can find ways So that these new numbers that we're dealing with now are way higher than what we had talked about. That was an early one. That was, it may get tweaked. That would mean 5,000 new residential units in Readington, which would basically double the township.
If that was the way.
If they all had their way, basically.
Right, if they had their way, yes, that's right.
So we may find ourselves dealing with one developer or another who comes with what we have been meeting with them. We have been assuring them that reasonable is a magic word. But we haven't been sued. We're working to come up with the best plan possible for the township.
Okay, and these properties have to be in a sewer service area?
Yes, they do.
Correct?
Yes, they
Okay.
do.
And they have to be within walking distance to a shopping center? No, that part's not
They-
correct.
They don't care if they starve, they just want them in. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sewer is the big issue.
Okay, great, thank you very
Okay.
much.
We're trying to do our best with that. We have good people on that committee too, so. Okay, any other comments from the public? All right, Sam,
Here's other comment.
gotta be quick. Okay.
Scott Stamble, 71 Jayhawk Road. There's been a lot of rumors going around about purchasers of the property. Is there any information that the township committee would have to share with us?
As far as I know, there's still purchasers under contract. As far as I know, there's not been any final signing of the contract. We have not we've spoken twice with partners or people from Merck, not for quite a while. And we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. We're kind of waiting for them to contact us because they're the ones that are going to have to make a proposal as to how the property is used. Yes, it's under contract. No, it's not signed. As far as we know, that's all we know.
It's basically due diligence?
Yeah. And that's been for a long time, so.
Same people or different?
As far as I know, same people. We've heard Google, we've heard Celgene. I haven't seen anything to indicate that there's been anybody but the original. It's 3 letters, and I'm dyslexic enough, I can't remember, DLD. Group of developers, anyway. And they're looking to utilize the property. That's as far as we've gotten.
And we're modifying the zoning there?
We modified all of our ROM to make it more attractive, so that it's not limited to just research, office, manufacturing. We try to broaden the permitted uses to add a hotel, for example, data storage, things that would be viable and good for Readington.
And how many zones, RO zones do we have other than the North property?
How many other properties is owned ROs?
The Belmead on Hall's Mill, we have that one on 22 that we were just talking about today. I'd have to look at the zoning.
Corner of 22 County Line, there's a parcel that's RO. They're all over. You can consult the zoning map if you wanted to.
But it's not just Merck. There are other properties. The problem is that office, whatever has changed. They don't, big office buildings, so we're trying to make it a little more flexible. Okay? Anybody else? Sam?
While Sam's waiting.
I don't blame you.
I would just ask to check the math on the numbers that were in the ordinance that we passed with respect to salaries. I think when I do the numbers of that are in that ordinance, it comes out to about a 2% increase over 24. So if you wouldn't mind just checking that. When I looked at the ordinance we passed,
Oh, okay.
the 9388 for the mayor, and the 8355 for the committee. When I do the math, that is 8355 times 4 plus 9388, it comes out to 43,800 and change, which is about 2% over the 2014 number.
They were supposed to be flat.
Thank you. That's it.
Anybody else? All right, motion to adjourn. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I kind of got into the rhythm of it, Sam. Go ahead.
Anyway, I just had a little comment on, Roberta. John had mentioned that, he has leased some land. He's the only one that I know of that leases any property and is paying any money to Readington.
I'm not sure it's the only one.
Well, there are 2 other leases, but they're more maintenance. He gets zero money from these other 2. And he, on his 4 properties, the total is $6,888. So that's as much as I know of what we're making on any rentals of farmland. But I am interested. I am happy to see that he is leasing other properties and is so into this organic thing, and that I think is one of the reasons why I'm interested in it. And I think it would be a great thing for the town. I'm glad to see someone taking such a big interest in farming.
Sam, I bet we could arrange for him to give you, or him or his farm manager. He's got this guy from Pennsylvania who knows more about organic animals than, and I mean, and let me see if we can set that up for you, because it's fun. It's amazing. I thought I did that last right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, good night, everyone. Travel safely. Thank you for coming.